Hi, I'm Ashley McElwain, licensed marriage and family therapist and founder and CEO of Foundation Restoration. Welcome to Foundation Restoration's Real Talk podcast, where you'll find real people discussing real issues while offering real help at the intersection of clinical expertise and a biblical perspective. We're so glad you've joined us. Welcome, friends, to this episode of the Real Talk podcast. I'm so glad to be together, as always. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, it has been crazy busy here. We had a big open house birthday bash to celebrate Foundation Restoration's 14 years of ministry, and just been so grateful for the people who came out and just the opportunity to celebrate God's goodness and faithfulness. And so as we get ready to hit our official 14-year mark, which is the end of May, we officially turned 14 years old as a ministry, which is just crazy on so many levels. But like most things in life, when you kind of have these markers or birthday, you begin to reflect and reminisce a lot. And it kind of is just this time to pause and say, wow, okay, 14 years. The 14 years brings a lot of learning. It brings a lot of lessons with it. And so today's episode, it's really all about sharing that with you. And so in this episode, I want to share some of the key truths that I've learned about ministry, about leadership, about venturing out to do something out of the box or out of the boat. And so let's go. Let's jump in and talk about kind of some of that journey and the things that I've learned along the way. The first thing I would say about ministry especially, but I think anytime you step out and start something on your own, taking a dream and trying to make it a reality, is that stepping out in faith is hard. And I know we live in a world that says if you can dream it, you can do it, and you reach for the stars. And I'm a firm believer in that. But I think that there has to be a dose of reality that when you step out, when you start something, it is hard. It is incredibly lonely. I find being in ministry, being in leadership, it can be a very lonely place. I have such a heart for people in leadership. I have such a heart for people in ministry because I personally know how difficult it is. I know how lonely it can feel. A lot of times you're the one everyone's coming to, looking for answers, looking for direction, looking for guidance, looking to be carried or held or comforted or directed. And that can be really hard because the reality is you don't know always what the answers are. You don't know what the next step is, and you might be hurting or you might be struggling or you might be going through something and don't always have a clear vision of what's next or how to overcome the obstacle or the hurdle. And so stepping out in faith is incredibly hard, and it can be very lonely where you feel like everybody's looking to you, everybody's looking at you. But a lot of times you feel very unseen. And that is a phenomenon of leadership and ministry that can happen a lot. Everybody looking at you, everybody looking to you, and yet nobody really seeing you. And so that is something I would want anybody who's considering being in ministry or stepping out and starting something or trying to make a dream come true, that they should know that stepping out is hard. And honestly, it's not for everyone. Because of the nature of the loneliness and the challenge and that feeling very invisible a lot, which is weird because, again, you can feel like all eyes are on you and yet you feel very invisible and unseen. That's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. And I do think that you really need to be called into that in order to actually see it through. So that would be the first thing I would say I've learned, is that stepping out in faith is really very, very hard. And I laugh because I say if I knew what running a ministry entailed, I don't know that I would do it again. And I'm sure God, by design, made sure that I was a bit naive and ignorant, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it. That's just the truth. It has been certainly very challenging and full of, like I said, loneliness and challenges, and it's been a journey I never would have envisioned for myself. And yet here I am. And so I think God used my ignorance to ultimately use me to be in this position. But here I am sharing with you. It is much harder than you think it is. And that would be my next point. And that is that when you step out, when you're in ministry, when you venture out of the boat, that it is a grind, not glamour. And I think it's very easy. I know even, we just had our open house, and I was talking to some dear friends who knew the ministry, knew us 10 years ago. And they came here and saw all of the new growth from the last 5 years of ministry. And I said, it's interesting because people see kind of the arrival, or they'll see when you finally get some traction, and they don't realize what it took to get there. And so, the reality is anyone can get excited. Anyone can start something, but not everyone can sustain it. Not everybody can see it through. It takes a lot of grit and the willingness and ability to grind it out, to hold this big picture in your mind, but then be able to translate that into a grind and a grit that every day you are doing the necessary micro for the macro. And it is very, very hard, and it's not glamorous. And a lot of times people see the glamorous side, or they see the successful side, and they have no idea about all of the tears. I can tell you, I've cried a lot of tears over the 14 years of ministry. If God is counting the tears, if He is bottling our tears, He's got a lot of bottles up there for me, because I can tell you, it's been a grind, and there's so many days and nights that I would be by myself crying out to God, crying, sobbing, and saying, Lord, you got the wrong girl. I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. This is so hard. I didn't know what I was signing up for. And so, there are a lot of tears that can be shed. And again, a lot of loneliness and a lot of feelings of self-doubt. If you've heard of the imposter syndrome, it's so easy to feel like this is the time I'm going to fail. Well, this is different. I'm not going to succeed. Even though I got 14 years under my belt in this ministry, is today the day? Is this the year we don't hit our fundraising mark? Is this the year I don't do what's needed, or I make the misstep, or screw up in some way that it all falls apart? When you're in leadership, you're very acutely aware of your inadequacies. You know the amount of wrestling you do in your mind. You know your fears. You know your failures. And that self-doubt and the insecurities, and a lot of people don't see that, and you can't necessarily always show that, because you are leading, and you want to evoke confidence, and you want to shield those you're leading from the fear and the anxiety and the doubts, and you want them to feel confident in their leader. Not that you're putting forth a fake facade, but at the same time there is a difference and a separation of, I'm going to wrestle and struggle over here with the Lord, so that I can go out here and evoke confidence and let them know, like, it's going to be okay. Kind of like a parent with a child, right? You don't let your kids see all of the fears, all of the struggles, all of the doubts. There's a certain insulation as a leader, and just like as a parent, you again don't, not that you hide emotions or struggles from your kid. You walk through things with them, but you do insulate them from a lot of the internal battles and a lot of the realities that they just don't need to know. And so, the reality of running a ministry or being in leadership is that it is a grind. It's not glamorous a lot of the time. There are great glamorous moments that feel really good and they're exciting, but by and large, stepping out, being in leadership, being in ministry, you are grinding it out. It is prayers prayed. It is tears shed. It is mental battles won. It is constantly pushing yourself to hold the big picture, but do the day-to-day, and to sustain the ultimate passion and vision that you started out with. And sustaining that is very, very challenging. And that brings me to my third point, and that is, I'm just not enough. And I've learned this in ministry, that I'm not enough. I am inadequate. I know all of my deficiencies. I know all of my inadequacies. I know the things that I don't know. And I think about John 15:5. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing. And man, ministry will make you realize that. Stepping out in faith will hammer that point right home. And I know every day I realize just how inadequate I am and how I need Jesus. I need my Creator because I'm just not enough. I cannot do it. I cannot be sustained in those times where I have been in a puddle, crying out to God, feeling like a failure, feeling so many fears and doubts and wondering what I'm doing, how I'm going to do it, all of the dark days. It is in those moments that I know God is holding me and I realize the pressure is not on me. Not that I don't feel pressure, obviously, but it's God. It's Him in me. He's made me. Anything I have, every talent, every thought, every breath is His. You know, and I know I've talked about this back in, I think, the identity podcast that I did a while ago, but I always say this, and this is in my quiet time of wrestling through this journey through 14 years, but I'm just a paintbrush in the artist's hand. It's not on me to paint the picture. It's not on me to even have the idea. It's just on me to rest in the hand of the Creator, of the artist who's painting the picture and who has chosen me as His instrument for His masterpiece. It's Him who creates. It's me who rests in Him. And as I'm working, not that I'll do my job, it is on me to fully realize my role and to be willing to be held by Him and to experience the strokes of His artistry. But at the end of the day, it's His creation. So it's His credit. It's His strength. It's His creativity. And I'm just His instrument, His chosen instrument. And that takes a lot of that pressure off as you journey and on the dark days to realize I'm just the paintbrush. I'm just the instrument in the artist's hands. And He's using me, and I'm just letting Him use me with what He gave me, because I'm one of His creations. I'm one of His masterpieces. And I think a lot about the song by Casting Crowns, Only Jesus. And they talk about this in the song, and I love it, how I don't care if they remember me, only Jesus. And so I'm not enough. It's Jesus. It's for Him. It's through Him. It's by His strength. It's through His grace. It is through His sustainment that I'm even here, that I'm even able to do anything, that I'm alive and breathing. And so when we remember that, it gives us a certain level of rest and peace to know He's got me and I'm going to be okay. My other point I would make is that I've learned your intentions matter and that you must know your why. Again, I've done podcasts on knowing your why, but your why matters. I know for me at Foundation Restoration, I fully believe in relationship, meaningful relationship, intimate relationship with the Lord, with ourselves, with our spouse, with our kids, with our family, with our friends, with our coworkers. Who we are in Christ matters, and how we treat people matters. And that's where, again, Foundation Restoration, I'm all about restoration with our relationship with the Lord, restoration with our relationship with ourselves, restoration with our relationship with our spouse, with our kids, with our parents. And when we restore that sense of love, when we do things in love, it matters. It makes a difference. It moves the needle, and it demonstrates God's love for us. Because, I think about the scripture. It says that we can do all things, right? Like if we can do tons of stuff for God, but if we don't do it with love, we're a clanging cymbal. It doesn't matter. We're just noise. And so I don't want to just make noise. I want to make a difference, and making a difference means that what I do is done in love. What I do is done for God. What I do is knowing that I am a steward. I have a very short life, and life is but a vapor, the Bible says. It's here today, gone tomorrow. And so I know that my life is so short. The season is so short for me to work for the Lord, to make a difference, to shine my light. I tell my little guy, Grayson, every day when he leaves for school, when I say goodbye for him at school, I tell him, go let your light shine. because that's what we're called to do. Every day we just go out into the world, we shine our light, we do things in love, we demonstrate the love of Christ in the way that we treat other people. And when we know that that's our why, it makes a difference in everything we do. And that's what sustains us in the dark days, especially again when you're in ministry, when you're in leadership and you are struggling with what am I doing here? God, I'm just desperate. You realize my why is to use the gifts, talents, treasures, abilities, everything God's given me to make a difference, to fulfill the plans and purposes He has for my life. What calling is on my life? My job is to make that mission come to fruition through His strength. And in the end, it's all about the lives that we've touched, because those lives are the lives that then are going to go out and touch others. And so what are your intentions? Are you living for others? Are you living to make a difference? Are you living with eternity in mind? And that's what will sustain you. And that leads into how you treat people. I've learned that how you treat people matters. Are you looking at people as a transaction, what I can get from you? Is it just checking a block? Okay, I did my part. Going through the motions? Or are you treating people like God calls you to treat people? Are you realizing that everything you do is representing Christ? As we minister, if we lose sight of the love behind it, then it really falls on deaf ears. It loses its power. It loses its impact. And I think that's where it's very easy to get burnt out. That's where the loneliness creeps back in, because as you're pouring out and pouring into others, as you're called to and with love, it can often leave you very empty. And you have to go back to your source, which is the Lord. But also, when you treat people well, you do get filled up by knowing that you're impacting people's lives and you're filling up others. But I think that you have to make sure that you also are having good boundaries to surround yourself with people who treat you well. And I would say this for every ministry leader, anybody in leadership, you have to find the few safe people. Sometimes that's coming to a therapist, going to a confidential setting where you have somebody who's professionally trained to hold and to sustain and to protect and care for you. But really finding people who love you and believe in you and will invest in you and pour into you and be there for the stretches where, I think about with Aaron and Hur holding up Moses' arms to victory. You need those people who will hold up your arms until your battle is won. And who you surround yourself with does matter. How you treat people matters, but how you're treated matters too. And so making sure that you have some accountability, some group of trusted people, even if it's a person who loves you and who will care for you and invest in you and encourage you and let you have a safe place to wrestle with your inevitable humanity as well and your weaknesses. Because people can often put somebody in ministry on a pedestal, but when you're in ministry, you're attacked over and over and over and over 100-fold. You're in the crosshairs of the enemy because he hates people living on mission. He hates people living on purpose. He hates when you're doing what God has created and called you to do. So he comes at you over and over and over. And it's easy in ministry to think I'm doing something wrong because of the adversity. But the reality is when you face adversity, it usually means you're doing something right. The enemy doesn't attack people that he feels are rendered powerless. If you're not doing anything for the kingdom of God, if you're not doing anything that makes a difference, the enemy isn't threatened by you. So he doesn't care what you're doing. He's not going to attack you. But when you're living on purpose, when you are living for the Lord, when you are in ministry and you are ministering and you are a conduit for God's love, the enemy is going to hate you. He's going to come against you. You are going to wrestle against principalities and powers of darkness. Hell's going to come against you because it hates you. And so you are going to face adversity. So be encouraged, which I know sounds weird, but be encouraged when you face adversity because that means that you are dangerous to the enemy. He is targeting you to try to render you useless so that you don't live for the Lord, so that you don't live on mission, so you're not fulfilling what God's called you to do, and therefore you are useless. So the enemy is going to come at you, and you do need people who are holding you up in prayer, who love you, who care about you, who genuinely are invested in you, and knowing that you're human too, and that you're going to have struggles, and they give you a place to be able to struggle, supported and loved. The other thing I've learned is I don't know everything, and I really probably don't know anything. The more you know, the more you don't. The more you know, the more you know you don't know. Again, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And you do have to realize that you have to pivot, and there's going to be challenges, and there's unknowns, and you're always learning, and you're always growing, and there's always a challenge, and you've never really arrived. Right? Ministry is about an ongoing journey with a destination that often seems evasive, and you are always pressing on and grinding it out, hoping that you're headed in the right direction, and hoping and praying that you can figure it out. But I think the key in ministry and leadership is to be somebody who is willing to always learn, always grow, always persevere, endure, challenge, jump, learn. And, I'll be honest, I never thought that I would run a ministry. It has come with a lot of challenges I never anticipated. And, ironically, as a Christian woman in leadership, I've faced challenges I just never imagined I would face. And it's been so much harder than I ever would have imagined. And I remember when the Lord first spoke the vision to me for Foundation Restoration, I wanted to be, I really feel like I empathized in that moment with Jonah and the desire to just run the other direction. Like, nope, don't want to do this, Lord. But God sustained me faithfully, moment by moment, bit by bit. And here I am 14 years later, and I realize I'm still learning, I'm still growing, but it's really about leaning on Him, and it's realizing that you don't know everything and you never will. And it's about the persistence. Again, I'm a very, very determined person. If you know me, I love having a goal. I'm a little bit on the crazy side. I graduated my undergrad early. I did a 4-year master's program in 2 years while working full time. And I always wanted to be a marriage and family therapist. I've always had a passion for mental health. I've always had a passion for families and marriages, and believing that's really the nucleus and the heartbeat of our society. I just love people. I love caring for people. From the time I was little, I feel like I was always the person that people came to, and I loved that. I have always felt it such an honor to walk with people through things, to be trusted, and to get to care for people in a tangible way. I've always considered that such an honor. But I never thought that I would be in ministry. I never thought I'd run a nonprofit. I laugh. My parents were the parents who didn't like us doing fundraisers. That's how much do you need? Just tell me how much you need. We'll figure something out. So to be in a situation where I have to ask people for money, and I have to ask, people to support the ministry, and which I've learned to shift that, and now it's not I have to, I get to. I get to invite people into what we're doing, and that's really what asking for donations and support is. Now I realize that it's an invitation to people, but it's still not my strength. And that's one of the hard things about ministry and leadership, is you find yourself doing a lot of things that really aren't your gifting, that you don't want to do, that you don't desire to do. But that's the grind, and you have to do it. And God grows you through it, and He equips you. And what people don't realize is the first 10 years of this ministry were filled with many, many tears, prayers, and wanting to give up. And I'm a very, like I said, I set a goal, I achieve a goal. That's who I am. I love doing things with excellence. I love persevering. I love pushing and challenging myself. But this ministry has brought me to my knees many, many times, where I have just wanted to give up. And, most people don't realize you don't get paid. There's a lot of sacrifices you make to be in ministry and to be in leadership. And that's why I say it's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not the original trajectory I ever envisioned for my life. But I can tell you it's been so rewarding. And when you see lives changed, or you see a dream become a reality, it's overwhelming. It is humbling to see that God would choose you to change a life. And so I would encourage you in kind of concluding thoughts of, and again, I could talk about all the lessons I've learned all day long. That could be a 10 podcast series. There's so much I've learned and so much I'm learning, but it's hard. It's not for everyone. It takes grit. It takes a grind. It takes a perseverance. It takes a dependence on God. It takes pure intentions. It takes intentionality and a humility to know that you don't know anything. Well, you don't know everything. There's a lot that you have to learn, that you have to grind it out and realize that there are many days that you want to give up and you just have to keep going. But if you feel called into ministry, or you feel called into leadership, then run that race with endurance. Don't give up. Push through the discomfort. Find safe people who love you and who love the Lord and who will let you be human, because this is messy. Life is messy. Ministry is messy. Leadership is messy. And you need people who are okay with that and realize messy is normal and will love you through it. Don't give up. Just push through and really listen to the Lord. You have to develop a sensitivity to the Holy Spirit and His leading, and an ability to just be truthful with yourself. And it's not easy. In case you haven't gotten that memo yet, it's not easy. It is hard, but goodness, the humble reality that the Creator of all has used me to change any life, let alone thousands of lives, is unbelievable to me. And I'm so grateful. I have an incredible team. I've had so many people who support this ministry, and there's a deep gratitude and such an overwhelming sense of awe at what God can create when you let Him, through you, with you. I want to conclude with, I mentioned the song, By Casting Crowns, Only Jesus, and I want to leave us with those words because I love it. And this is really the song of my heart in my ministry, and I think it voices it so well. Make it count, leave a mark. Build a name for yourself. Dream your dreams. Chase your heart above all else. Make a name the world remembers. But all an empty world can see is empty dreams. I got lost in the light, but it was up to me to make a name the world remembers. But Jesus is the only name to remember. And I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't care if they remember me. Only Jesus. And I've only got one life to live. I'll let every second point to Him. Only Jesus. All the kingdoms built, all the trophies won will crumble into dust when it's said and done, because all that really matters, did I live the truth to the ones I love? Was my life the proof that there is only one whose name will last forever? And I don't want to leave a legacy. I don't care if they remember me, only Jesus. And I've only got one life to live. I'll let every second point to Him, only Jesus. Jesus is the only name. Jesus is the only name. Jesus is the only name to remember. Well, friends, this concludes this episode of the Real Talk Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad you did. Remember, you were handcrafted by God, are dearly loved, and greatly needed in this world. We look forward to seeing you back here next time. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Real Talk. To stay connected, follow Foundation Restoration on Instagram and Facebook at FND Restoration, or visit us at www.foundationrestoration.org for more information. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to follow or subscribe and to leave us a 5-star review so more people can find our show. Foundation Restoration is a 501c3 nonprofit ministry that believes marriage is the heartbeat of society and exists to equip, strengthen, and restore marriages through clinical expertise and a biblical perspective. Please consider supporting our ministry with a tax-deductible donation at www.foundationrestoration.org. Your gift makes programs like this possible. Thank you for your generosity and partnership.